welcome you all in the second lecture of embedded system. So in the last lecture, in the introductory lecture of the embedded system, we have studied what is an embedded system, and we have also talked about some of the applications of the embedded system. So how did we define the embedded system? So we define the embedded system, it is nothing but an information processing system. So it is an information processing system which takes some input from the real world, and gives output to the device. So input is taken through some sensors and output is given by the actuators, right? So if you draw the very simple architecture of this information processing system, so it is nothing but it contains a CPU, right? It is having some microprocessor. So information processing system is it has some microprocessor or microcontroller. So what is the basic block diagram of embedded system we draw? So it has one CPU, one set of inputs, one set of outputs, and it has some memory, right? So if I draw, this is general architecture, very simple architecture of the embedded system. If I draw a very simplified block diagram, so this is nothing but a simplified block diagram of embedded system, right? So how will I define this? So input is coming to the CPU, okay, and the output is going from the CPU, right? And it is also accessing the memory, right? So this is very simple block diagram of the embedded system. Also, in the last lecture, we have talked about different applications of embedded systems, right? So applications of embedded systems. So there are various applications in embedded system. So it has application in consumer electronics, right? It has application in household application, home automation, it has application in telecom sector, automobile industry. Okay, so it has application in various the embedded system has application in various industries. It has application in computer peripherals, right? It has application in healthcare. It has application in basically measurement and instrumentation. Also it has application in banking and retail. It has also application in many wearable devices, right? It has some application in card readers. So we talk about the different examples of household application. So we have television, we have washing machine, we have refrigerator, we have microwave oven. So the embedded systems are there for some specific task in these household applications. Similarly, for home automation and security system, so we have anti-theft system, intruder detection system, CCTV cameras. So these are all nothing but embedded system. In telecom sector, we have cellular telephones, telephone switches, handset multimedia applications, right? So So in automobile industry we have anti-locking system, anti-braking system, engine control, ignition system, etc. Similarly, we have application in computer peripherals. So we have printers, scanners. So what is the job of printers, scanners? It takes input from the computer, okay, and then it will start printing or scanning. So rest of the time it will go in a power saving mode. This also we have talked about in the last class, and it has application in healthcare. So see, you can see right now there are so many automated system in healthcare, such as PPG, ECG, EEG. Okay, so there are a lot of advancement in the healthcare sector, and which is possible due to the technological advancement in the VLSI design. Now it has application in banking and retail. So we have ATM machine, currency counter, etc. Wearable devices. So you can see in the market there are a lot of fitness tracker, a smartphone screen extension for notification, etc. And there are card readers, right? So we have barcode readers, smart card readers, handheld devices, etc. Right? And there are so many number of more applications. So these things we have talked about in the last lecture, right? Also, we have talked in the last lecture about different design constraints constraint of embedded system. So what are the design constraints we have studied in the last class? So in the last lecture we have studied there are various design constraints, such as the size of the embedded system, right? So one of the design constraints we have studied size. Then we have performance, right? So performance is also one of the design constraint. Then power, how much power it should use, right? And one of the most important design constraint is non-recurring cost, right? Non-recurring cost of a system. And we have studied one more thing, that is unit cost. Okay, we will study all these things in detail, but and one more design constraint was basically the time to market. Okay, time to market. And we missed one design constraint in the last class, that is time to prototype. So these three constraints are manufacturing constraint, and these are very, very important constraint while designing any embedded systems, right? And there are some minor design constraints which need to be taken care by designing embedded system. So when we are designing an embedded system, okay, we cannot satisfy all the design constraints, because there are several trade-offs among several design constraints. Okay, for example, if you want to increase the performance of the embedded system, okay, if you want to increase the performance of the system, it may increase the power consumption of the embedded system, which is not desirable, right? So we have to make a balance between several design constraints. So let's suppose if you want to increase the performance, so there can be another trade-off factor. It will increase the cost of the embedded system, right? So there are several design constraints which are trade-offs to each other. Okay, so we have to optimize all the parameters in such a way that it is optimal in all design constraints. So your design embedded system is optimum in all design constraints, right? So as I told that there are two important design constraints. One is time to market and time to prototype, and also there is a non-recurring cost and unit cost. So first we will study the time to market design constraint. Okay, time to market design constraint. So what is actually time to market design constraint? Suppose you want to design any embedded system, or let's say any system, right? Any system. So or any mobile phone, let's say. So what is a general graph So if I draw the general graph between you know the sales of the particular system and time, right? So let's suppose if I start my manufacturing here, and I started, my device is manufactured, and I started selling it, right? So initially the sale will be very low, right? Because the new device is coming into the market, so people will listen about the device, and they will buy, and they will try to learn the device, right? And gradually the sale will increase, sale will increase, and there will be a time where the sale will be at the peak, right? So as the technology is going obsolete day by day, so there will be time that after that time the sales will go down, right? So this is the typical graph of any sale versus time system, right? Now let's suppose you have to start actually the production here, so that you can start selling those products. But let's say there is a delay in the production, and this is the delay which is there in the production. So definitely you can start selling here, right? So what will happen in this case also, people will start learning, and sale will be increased, okay? And there will be time it will go to maximum, right? And again it will go down. So if you see this graph, if you are delaying the product into coming into the market, right? So when the product is coming into market, if there is a delay, if you are not able to properly bring into the market, what will happen? Your competitors will take that product into market, right? So definitely there will be your sale will be going down, right? So this is the reduction in your sales due to the delay introduced in the time to market. So if you see due to this delay time, this is nothing but delay in time to market. So how much this delay is important for any embedded system? Okay, so we will study this. So we will do some numerical calculation based on this, like how much percentage I am getting revenue loss by introducing that much delay, right? So what will happen? Let's say if I approximate this graph in such a way, so what I will do, I will approximate this graph, okay? So let's say this is sales means ultimately it is nothing but your revenue, right? Sales means it is nothing but your revenue, okay? So and this is your time. So suppose you started production on time, and your time to market is this one, so you will achieve, let's say, certain revenue, right? And then again the selling will fall off, so again you are having decrement in the revenue. So I have approximated all the fall and rise in the sales by a straight line, right? So I have just taken a straight line, and I have approximated all the falls and rise in the sales, right? So now if there is a delay in the time to market, so what will happen? Definitely there will be a maximum revenue at the time. So there will be difference between the actual revenue and this revenue, because your competitors has brought their product into the market, right? So there will be a loss in the revenue. So if I draw this graph, so what will happen? So let's say that this is your on time delivery or time to market, actually on time market, and this is the delay, right? So let's say this thing we call it as a W, where W is the time where the revenue at its peak, and the total life cycle of the product is 2W. Okay, so let's say the total life cycle of any product, so this is life cycle of any product, which is 2W, and W is the time where the sale or revenue is at its peak, right? So if I draw the area under this curve, so that is nothing but, that is the total revenue I have earned, right? And due to that product cycle. So what is the area? So this is a triangle, so I can define the area of this triangle, right? So what is the area of this triangle? That is nothing but 1 by 2 into base into height. So if I calculate the area, if I bring my product on time, so what will be my revenue? So this is nothing but 1 by 2 times, what is the base? Base is nothing but 2 times W, and what is the height? Height is maximum is W. So this we will get nothing but W square, right? So this is the area or the total revenue we are earning, that is W square. Now there is a delay. Okay, so when there is a delay in time to market, so I can calculate the area due to the delayed time to market, right? So that is nothing but 1 by 2. What will be the base? Actually it was, if I draw it, this is what is the actually the base is nothing but, this is 2W minus D, right? So this is the base. So if I write it down, this is nothing but your 2W minus D. And what is the height? Height is also reduced, and height is nothing but W minus D. So if I calculate the percentage revenue loss, what will be the percentage revenue loss? What is that? That is nothing but W square. The initial sale was W square when the product is on time. Now when the product is delayed, then the sale is nothing but 2D minus W minus D upon 2. Okay, and if I calculate percentage loss, that is nothing but D 3. If I do the calculation, you will get D times 3D minus 3W minus D upon 2. Okay, if you solve it, you will get this one. Divide by W square into 100. So this is nothing but your percentage revenue loss. So this is your percentage revenue loss, right? So let's take some numbers here. So let's say that the total product cycle of that particular product is nothing but 52 weeks. So let's suppose you have a product cycle which is of 52 weeks, that is nothing but 2 times of W, right? And let's say that you have delay in introducing that product by 4 weeks. So there is a 4 weeks delay when you are launching the product into the market. So if you put if you take 2W as 52 weeks and D is nothing but 4 weeks, then you will incur the loss of 22%, right? And even the loss is increased even if you delay only by 10 weeks. Okay. So if you delay by 10 weeks, your loss can go to 15%, 50%, right? So this matrix, time to market matrix, is very important, right? So if you delay the time to market, what will happen? You will incur huge loss. So what some companies do, they will compromise the quality of the product, right? So even they don't wait to final validate all the parameters of that embedded system, and they will launch their product. Why? Because if they will delay that particular product with the technological advancement, another competitor will bring into the market, right? So what will happen? They will incur huge loss, right? So what they will do, they will first launch the product. So meanwhile the sale will start, people will start learning about the product, and they can provide some updates to the softwares and all those things to improve the performance. But initially they also don't validate all the parameters, because they have to satisfy this time to market matrix. And although these are little bit related, but they are different, quite different, these two design metrics. One is time to market, which we have studied, and another is time to prototype, right? So what is the time to prototype? Time to prototype is the time taken to design initial prototype. So you have some idea in the mind so you have some idea in the mind, you will work out, right? So you will sketch all the design flow of that, and then you will try to implement it, right? You will try to implement. So whatever the initial working prototype will be there, that is called as how much time it is taking to design first prototype, first working prototype, and that is called as time to prototype. So we have to satisfy this design constraint also, because if this is satisfied, then only you can manufacture and bring that product into the market, right? So these two design constraints are very, very important design constraint in designing the embedded system. Now one of the important other design constraint is that is NRE cost and unit cost metric. So what is actually NRE cost? Okay, so NRE cost is nothing but initial cost, right? So we can call it as initial production, not production, we should call it initial manufacturing cost. Initial manufacturing cost. So what is the meaning of initial manufacturing cost? So let's suppose you want to design a mobile phone, right? So what you will do? You have to first you have to buy some plots, right? You have to establish a company, you have to install some machines dedicated to manufacture that product, right? And all the required material, right? So this is called as one-time cost. Okay, this is also called as one-time cost, that you have to put it for set up that production, right? So you have to install a company, you have to set up a factory or manufacturing setup. You have to invest some money for that, and that cost is called as NRE cost, non-recurring cost, which is occurred one time, right? Now how it will play a major role in calculating the total cost, we will see. Now what will be the total cost? If I talk about the total cost of a product, so total cost is nothing but, so total cost will be NRE. Okay, so let's say I'll call it as cost of NRE, CRE. NRE is nothing but the cost of non-recurring manufacturing cost, right? Plus the unit cost. Suppose you are designing any particular product, okay, so the raw material will be, again and again you need to pay something, right? And you need to pay the labor charge, right? So that is not non-recurring, that is not one-time investment, you have to pay because they are working for you. So that is called as recurring cost, right? And the recurring cost is nothing but, so we can define it as per unit cost, right? And how many units you want to design, that we can multiply it by n. So let's say n is nothing but the number of units I want to design. So the total cost is nothing but one-time investment, and there is a per unit cost, right? So if I define per unit cost, for designing one product, kitna I had to invest, right? We have to see. So if we write per unit cost, so per unit cost is nothing but the NRE cost divided by the number of units I want to design plus the per unit cost every time I am getting for the designing that unit, right? So if you take some numbers, for example, if you take the NRE cost NRE cost as 5 lakhs. So I am investing 5 lakhs for designing some product, and let's say that I am designing 100 products. Okay, so let's say I am designing 100 products, and per unit cost I am getting every time when I am designing this unit, I am getting a recurring cost of 5,000 rupees, right? So the total cost I will get for designing that product is, that is a non-recurring cost 5 lakhs plus 500 times 100 products you have to design. So the totally I have to invest 10 lakh rupees for designing that product. So if I calculate per unit cost for that product, so that will come around with lakhs divided by 100 plus 5,000, so that comes around 10,000 rupees. So this is the base price at which one product is manufactured. Now I can decide the profit I want to make, so I will add that money onto this cost, and I can. So the next design matrix was performance, right? So how do you analyze the performance of any embedded system? There are two factors which are used to analyze the performance of any embedded system. One is latency and another is throughput, right? So latency means how much delay your system is getting after taking the input, right? So how much your system is taking delay in giving the output after getting the input, so that is the latency. So the latency is a very important factor. If your latency is very high, okay, so your embedded system will not able to perform its job to giving the feedback to the large product and large real-time system, okay, which may cause some problems in the real-time system. And another is throughput. So these two are actually very important design constraints for evaluating the performance. But generally, when you want to compare two embedded systems, so these are not the good measure to compare two embedded system. So one is clock frequency and another is MIPS. So some of the manufacturers make you fool by telling that this system has more clock frequency and this this embedded system can execute more MIPS, million instructions per second, but it is not the ideal way to compare. So so let's suppose for a low end application we need a system which does not need so many instructions, right? So even if a low MIPS will be more useful there, because if you need more clock frequency and MIPS, you need to pay more, right? So for a low end application we don't need those many instructions, so why should we pay more? Okay, so the correct comparison is you have to see the application, for what specification we want to design an embedded system. Okay, so these two are not the good measure system we have taken. This is the information processing system we have taken, and we have taken input, and this is your output. So this we have studied that this is very simplified embedded system block diagram, right? So now we will in detail we will go through the architecture of embedded system. So if I draw the detailed architecture, so what is the detailed architecture? So we have a information processing system. So who will process? Either a microprocessor or microcontroller, and any microprocessor and microcontroller is having a CPU, right? And input is nothing but your sensors. So we have sensors to communicate with the real world, and they are taking or measuring the input, right? And we have a actuators here, right? We have actuators here. So if I draw the architecture, detailed architecture of the information processing system, basically, so it has some CPU, right? and sensor is measuring some analog input from the real world, so we need a analog to digital converter, right, which converts your analog input value to the digital output, and this output is going to the CPU for processing, right. So when CPU has done some processing and taken decision, again that decision is converted into analog form, and that is feed to the actuators, right. So suppose the CPU want to do some calculation, so what are the things it needs? So it needs a developing environment, right. So we have to write a piece of code, okay, that can be written in high level language or assembly language, right. So we need a developing environment, right, where the person or a designer, embedded system designer, will develop a code. So we need a human interface, right, we need a human interface. Also we need some diagnostic tool, right. So we have to see that whatever we are designing, that is compiling correctly or giving decision correctly. So we need some diagnostic tool to assess the performance of that particular task, right. And we are performing some task, okay, so definitely there will be power dissipation, so we need a cooling system, right. So we need a cooling system, and CPU is processing some instructions, okay, and data also, right. So from where the instruction will be fetched and data will be fetched, so we need some memory, so this is your memory. I am not dividing here into data memory and program memory, that we will separate it out in the later lectures, but we need some memory, right. And so everything is there, so we need an operating system which will execute all the tasks, right. So there will be definitely a software. Is it clear? So already in the last lecture we have seen that embedded system is nothing but the combination of hardware and software, or also we can call it as firmware, right. So embedded system is a combination of software and hardware. We cannot separate hardware and software because many of the function can be implemented in the hardware, right. So you can design a hardware to do that certain task, and many of the things you can convert into a software. So when we are designing an embedded system, we have to divide like what many functions, how many functions we want to implement in hardware and how many functions we want to implement in software, right. So that also we will see in detail, that is called as hardware and software partitioning, right. So that is called as hardware and software partitioning. So depending on the application, we can go for an FPA design, okay. We cannot directly go for manufacturing, right. So we have to first design a system on the emulators or simulators, and we will assess the performance. Then we can go for an FPGA design or an ASIC design, application specific IC design, right. That is a later part. And if you talk about this all things, no, this is nothing but we are packaging into a single package, right. These are nothing but we are packaging into a single product, right. So this is the detailed architecture of an embedded system, right. So here we have seen that this is the part of a hardware and this is a software, right. So what is actually an embedded system? Okay, so embedded system, we have defined it as, it is nothing but a combination of hardware and software, right. It is a combination of hardware and software. Now we have to decide how many functions we want to implement it on hardware or software, right? Suppose we are keeping many of the functions in the hardware. Okay, lot of functions there we are implementing on the hardware itself, and we are keeping the software part very less. So what will happen actually? So we are introducing hardware, so what will happen? The cost will increase, obviously, right? The cost will increase because we are introducing a lot of hardware. Now another thing is flexibility will decrease because you have designed the hardware. You cannot frequently change the hardware once it is designed for certain task, right? Another thing is the advantage. These are the disadvantage, right? These are the disadvantage when you implement lot of functions in the hardware. Now what are the advantage you will get? What is the advantage I will get if I implement many functions in the hardware? So your system will be very fast. Okay, the system will be very fast. It may dissipate low power. If your hardware is properly designed, it may dissipate low power, right? Power consumption will be low. Okay, so now on the other hand, if you want to implement many of the function in the software, what will happen? The cost will go down. These are the advantage, and flexibility will increase. What is the flexibility? Flexibility is one of the characteristics of the embedded system, and that is very important characteristics. So flexibility means by little bit changes you can change in functions. Okay, suppose you are getting some problems in that performing some task, you can introduce, right? You can introduce software updates. So you have lot of flexibility to change in the future, and flexibility means nothing but the system is able to adapt. The system is able to adapt, right? So suppose after some technological advancement, your system can adapt. So you can little bit make some changes in the code, and you can adapt to a new system, right? But if your hardware is fixed, you cannot do so much of changes. So when many of the tasks are implemented in software, so what will happen? Your flexibility will increase. Now what is the disadvantage I will get it if I implement a lot of functions in the software? Your system will become slow, because first it has to run in the software, and then it will go to perform a task, right? It has to convert into machine language and so on, right? And it will dissipate more power. So this is also an optimization problem. So an embedded system designer has to optimize that how many functions I want to implement in software, and how many functions I want to implement in hardware. So this is called as software and hardware partitioning. Okay, that we will study in detail in the later lectures. Now actually we have studied that there is some software and there is some hardware, right? So essentially what is there in hardware? So hardware, we have nothing but your processing element. Okay, that is nothing but your microprocessor or microcontroller. We have some peripherals, right? So peripherals means you have to take some input output, and that will be coming through some sensors and actuators. Okay, we have some interfacing protocols because we are interfacing some outside device to the processing element, so we need some interfacing protocols. We have memory, we have different buses, address bus, control bus, and database to control the hardware. Now what is there in software? Software means there are two softwares. One is system software, another is application software. Okay, another is application software. So your system is there, embedded system is there, it is performing some task, right? So there are some set of tasks which are going to be executed on the processing element, right? So we will control all these things. So we need a dedicated operating system, or we can call it as special operating system, and this is also called as, in terms of real time, in terms of embedded system, we call it as real time operating system. Okay, so what are there in real time operating system? One is cross compilers and cross assemblers. So this RTOS we will study in detail in the later lectures. There will be, so you want to design any embedded system. So what thing first you will do? You will not go directly for manufacturing, right? So you will write a piece of code. Okay, so you have some flow, right? So you will evaluate, or you want to mimic that product into a software, and that is called as, we can do that thing in emulators, right? So we have emulators which are mimicking that hardware. So if I design a particular hardware with some set of functions and some set of inputs and output, how it is going to execute, what will the power level dissipation, how can I optimize the parameters. So we should not go directly for manufacturing, right? So we need some emulators and simulators. So first we will emulate or simulate the design of that embedded system, right? So this is there in hardware and software of an embedded system, right? So in the hardware, if you talk about hardware, so how the hardware is evaluated, the hardware evolution is there over time. So we can see that how the hardware evolution is there over time. So let's talk about hardware evolution over time. So initially, when you talk about there was only general purpose microprocessor and microcontrollers, right? So there will be only dedicated general purpose microprocessor and microcontrollers, which has very limit computational complexity or computational capability. Then you want to go for a high-end application, there are a lot of powerful instruction set which is introduced into the modified hardware architecture. So you know that there is a DSP processor. Okay, so if you talk about general purpose hardware, general purpose microcontroller and microprocessor, so it has some specific instruction set. So it has some instruction set, and that is very generic, which is used to perform some set of operations. But in DSP there are very powerful instruction set which are introduced. Okay, there are some powerful instruction sets which are introduced in the DSP processor. Then next we went to application specific processor. Okay, over the time we have gone for application specific processor. Then we have gone for systems on chip. So from down to top there is a higher degree of peripherals, right? So as the systems are becoming more powerful over the time, or in the hardware, we can attach, we have high degree of peripherals, right? Also, there are so many advancement in the software and in the while designing any embedded system, right? So initially, since we have very limited instructions, right? So the code was not compact, right? The code length was high. But nowadays, because of the advancement in the hardware, we are able to support many of the complex instructions in the in the software, and the code is also efficient. Since we have new set of instructions which are supported, the code is becoming efficient. Also, when an embedded system designer is designing some code, it has to keep in mind that code should be correct. Another thing should be, code should be efficient or compact. Another thing is very important thing, which is while you're writing a software, so your code should be fault tolerant. So what is the meaning of fault tolerance here actually? So fault tolerant means your embedded system is going to be embedded into a larger product, right? Suppose, let's say there is a crash in your embedded system, or basically your embedded system is not working, so it should be a fault tolerant, right? So no matter, even if my system is failed, my embedded system is failed, it should not affect much to the real time large system, right? Because what will happen, embedded system cost will be very less, we can replace it, right? But if your your system is faulty, it should be tolerant to that real time device, otherwise it can cause more damage to the actually real time system, right? So this is all about hardware and software. So we will close the lecture today. In the next lecture we will study in detail what is actually a general purpose computer or a general purpose processor, and what is application specific processors. So in the next lectures we will study processors, different types of processors in detail, okay, in the next lecture. So thank you.